Good evening, everyone. My name is Meg Wheeler. I'm a candidate for Massachusetts State Senate. Welcome tonight to our community check-in. I'm just going to go ahead and get us live here on Instagram over here, so bear with me for 1 minute, please. Hey, everyone over on Instagram. I'm Meg Wheeler, candidate for Massachusetts State Senate in the Plymouth and Norfolk District. I've got my folks over here on Facebook, YouTube, our website, as well as here on Instagram. So welcome, everyone. We are moving to doing these community check-ins. You may have been following us for a while now. We've been doing COVID-19 updates almost every night for the last 2 months to really ensure that we are hearing from everyone in the district, that we are checking in on folks and just making sure that everyone is getting through this pandemic as reasonably as we can expect. But we wanted to go ahead and make a little bit of a shift now to more of a check-in. So we'll be doing these on a weekly basis every Tuesday night at 7:30. And this is really an opportunity for you to hear from me about what's going on with the pandemic, what's going on in general with the campaign, and for me to hear from you. So an opportunity for you to ask your questions, for me to get you answers, and really for us to have a candid conversation on the things that are most important for you. So I want to go ahead. We've got several folks have sent us questions in advance. I want to get those answered first, but if you are joining us live, definitely let me know in the comments. And also let me know if you have any questions. If we have time, I will definitely get to them. For everyone watching, I always answer every question I receive. You can send us questions on our website, but I will also be answering them here on these community check-ins. And you can actually do that by going to megwheeler.com/questions. I'll drop that in the comments. And you can always send us questions there, like I said, and I will get those answered for you. So let me put that in the comments right now. Okay, perfect. So that is there. So let's go ahead to the questions that folks had sent in advance. We've got some great questions, and I want to make sure I get these for you. So bear with me for 1 moment here. We are going to, we'll take this off. Let's get that question over here. So here's a great question. We're gonna start off with a big one right off the bat. So Kelly out of Duxbury asks, what do you think of the governor's current plan to reopen our economy? So first of all, let's recap for anyone who may not be up to date on what the governor's plan actually is. So the governor announced yesterday, actually, let me back up even further. About a week ago, or maybe 2 weeks ago now, the governor actually announced a reopening advisory council. And this council was made up of prominent business leaders, folks from the health sector, to really look at what it would take to reopen our economy and what those steps needed to be and how we could really ensure that all of the residents of Massachusetts were able to still stay safe even with the reopening. On Monday, so yesterday, the governor announced more details on the plan coming out of this advisory council. And the biggest announcement really was that there is still an intention to open at least some businesses on May 18th, which is next Monday. And then it'll now be a 4-phase plan. So so we'll start obviously with phase 1, and that'll be where very few businesses will reopen, but really the ones that are able to still do their business with minimal interaction and very, very severe restrictions. And then it'll move to stage 2, which is more businesses, slightly reduced restrictions, but still restrictions. And then we'll move to stage 3, and again, kind of more businesses, fewer restrictions, and then stage 4 or phase 4, which is being called really the new normal. And phase 4 will happen when there is adequate testing and we've got a better sense of tracing for the virus. So that's very, very high level, the governor's plan. The question though from Kelly in Duxbury was, what do I think of the governor's current plan to reopen the economy? Here's the thing. I am concerned by a few things that have happened with regards to this conversation over the last few weeks. The first is who actually sits on this reopening economy council. Well, this is not a knock on anyone who's currently sitting on the council. I do think that the council lacks a lot of really important voices in this conversation. It lacks representation from the unions. It lacks representation from teachers. It lacks representation from parents and childcare providers. It lacks representation from people with disabilities, from small business owners. It lacks representation from workers. And I think that's a big problem. I think when I look at the makeup of the current committee, it does not reflect the diversity of stakeholders who will be affected by the decisions the committee will make. And that's an issue for me. So I think, and I've said this repeatedly throughout the campaign on a variety of policies and issues that we've talked about, that one of the things that is very important to me that I want to make sure we do when I'm in the state Senate is ensure that all of the stakeholders have a voice at the table and are part of the conversation. And I didn't see that happen, and I'm not seeing that happen right now in the makeup of this, reopening the economy advisory committee. So that's my first issue. The second is I am very troubled by the fact that we are still talking about reopening the economy less than a week from now, but businesses have been given no guidance. Businesses don't even know which ones will be able to open. We don't have that list yet. And we're being told that the governor and the Reopen the Economy Advisory Committee will be issuing their plan on Monday, May 18th. Well, that's the day we're supposed to be doing this. So I think we all know, and look, if you've been on Zoom calls talking with folks and paying attention to these things, I think everybody understands that this isn't really going to happen next Monday. That's the general consensus because nobody's been given the information. But that's not the message we're hearing at the state level. And so I think that's a concern as well. There's also a concern that even with the plan coming out next Monday, how much time is going to be given for businesses to adjust to this plan? This is a really hard problem. This is a really complex issue and situation that we need to deal with. And I don't want to sort of belittle that, right? There's no right or obvious answer here. But because of that, it seems really unadvisable to me that we would put a plan out and expect businesses to be able to implement that plan very quickly. And so I'm really concerned, especially for my small business folks and my workers, that this plan is going to be put out there, and then there's going to be this expectation that they follow it quickly, that they get their businesses opened quickly. And I think that's creating a lot of stress and anxiety in the business community. And frankly, I don't think it's a great way to roll open this. I also think what's not being addressed yet, and maybe it will be, but it's not being addressed yet, is that this is not as simple as putting some guidelines in place and making sure that people stay apart and having limited capacity. People are really concerned about going out into public, going out into establishments, going back to work. I'm the mom of a 3-year-old, and right now his daycare is closed through the end of June. But I have reservations about sending him back in July. I'm worried. Where are the guarantees that he'll be safe in his school? And they aren't there because we can't make guarantees in this time. This is like nothing we've ever experienced before, and we're having to figure this out as we go. And so I think that needs to be addressed more as we're talking about this plan to reopen the economy. And let's be clear here, we keep using this term reopen the economy. The economy has been open. The vital things that drive our economy have been running this whole time. Our grocery stores, our hospitals, our schools, even though we're not there in person. And so I think we keep using this lingo, but in reality, we're not talking about reopening the economy. We're talking about enabling more businesses to be open. But the economy is open. The economy is open, and our essential workers are out there right now fighting for all of us. So, Kelly, I am dissatisfied with the governor's current plan to reopen the economy. And look, I understand that these are hard questions. I don't want to make light of this at all. And I don't think that there is one perfect answer. But I do believe that when the voices of all of the stakeholders are not a part of the conversation, then whatever solution comes out of that is completely inadequate. So that's my hope, is that we will have an opportunity for more people to be a part of this conversation, that we will see more on what the plan is, that businesses will have more time to adapt to this. But candidly, I'm not seeing that happen right now. So time will tell. We will obviously continue to monitor it. I hope it goes well. I mean, obviously, I hope that this is that we are able to, resume a lot of our normal activities without seeing a recurrence of the virus, without people getting sick, without our hospitalization rates increasing. But right now I'm nervous. I am nervous about the current plan. And so I hope to see better from our state. All right, great question, Kelly. Thank you for that. Chris in Weymouth has a great question here. And again, folks who are joining me live, thank you so much for popping in. So this is our community check-in. We're going to be doing these every Tuesday night at 7:30 p.m. moving forward. If you've got questions, you can drop them in the comments. Or if you have questions at any time, you can head on over to megwheeler.com/questions. I answer all questions that I receive. So thank you to everybody who is here and who is watching me live. So, okay, Chris from Weymouth asks, I'm a teacher and I'm concerned about going back to school in the fall. We don't know what that will look like, and we have no clue if COVID-19 will still be a threat. Yeah, Chris, thank you so much for this question. You know, and I mean, I spoke about it just a minute ago, but as a parent, this is something that's very much weighing on my mind as well. And I'm really glad that you asked this question, because I do think in this conversation about returning to school, we are, not everyone, but oftentimes we are forgetting that this is a concern for teachers as well. And, you know, it's not just a concern for teachers who are older or who have health issues, but I think this is a concern for all teachers. You know, schools are an incredible, incredible environment where our children are nurtured, but they're also an environment where a lot of people are in a relatively small space for a long period of time. And it strikes me as the type of place where we might see the spread of COVID-19 happen more regularly or more quickly because of that. And even though in the past, you know, there was some thought that children were not as susceptible to the virus, we're now hearing very troubling reports that may in fact not be the case, and that children may in fact still be at risk of catching this virus and unfortunately and very sadly succumbing to it. So this is a concern for me, absolutely. It's a concern for me as a mother. It's a concern for me as someone who really values the education system in our town and in our district and in our state, and wants to make sure that our teachers, and it's not just teachers, it's all school staff, make sure that every single person that goes into that building is safe. I have a few thoughts on, I have a lot of thoughts on this coming to mind. The first thought I have on this is why unions are so important, because I firmly believe that as we're having these conversations about how to go back to school, how to go back to work, unions are going to be incredibly important in ensuring that the voices and the concerns of teachers and all school staff are heard and are being addressed. So I want to say that first and foremost, I think if there's ever been a time before where I am grateful that we have unions, that they exist, and I believe that they, you know, are incredibly important, it's right now, because this is the time. And it's not to say, I don't want to make this sound like there's going to be some fight. Like, this is not to say that our schools aren't concerned about the health and safety of our kids, and our teachers and businesses are concerned about their workers. They absolutely are. But I think it's just, there's so much going on right now. There's so many different conversations, so many different concerns, so many different possibilities and scenarios, that unions play a really important role in ensuring that the concerns of our teachers and our school staff are really heard in this time. So that's the first thing. I think the second thing is really recognizing that school as we know it, education as we know it, is fundamentally changed and will fundamentally change next year. And I think it's really important that we not rush to get back to what we had too quickly. Because my fear, and this isn't just for schools, but for everything, my fear is that we do rush and then we end up with a resurgence of this virus in the winter. And you know, we saw this with the Spanish flu. I think the scientists and medical professionals are telling us that this is a concern, and I think we need to take that very seriously. Now, I understand the challenges with remote learning. I understand the drawbacks of it. And I do recognize that it's not as simple as saying, okay, we're going to put everybody online. Again, I have a 3-year-old. Trying to get him to sit there for Zoom calls with his teachers is practically impossible. So I get it, but I do think we need to have those conversations now. And I know a lot of schools are having those conversations now. And we need to make sure that our schools have the resources they need so that every child has access to the educational offerings, not just those who can afford an iPad or a computer. I also think we need to talk about and get honest with ourselves about what being safe in our schools really looks like. You know, people keep throwing out these words like social distancing and, you know, lots of hand washing and all of that. But what does that actually look like in a school? Because a school is a very different environment. When you've got 28 4-year-olds running around, that, you know, trying to get them to not touch their face or to always wash their hands or to sneeze on, you know, in their elbow or to wear a mask. I mean, if teachers think they can do it, I mean, frankly, if anyone can do it, teachers can do it. Let's be honest. But I sure as heck cannot do that. I to get one child, my child, to be able to do all of those things. So, and I think teachers recognize that that's going to be a real, sorry, people recognize that for teachers to have to do that is going to be very difficult. So I think we need to get real about that conversation and, you know, look, I know that this is a really hard conversation to have. I know that we're all struggling right now and we want to return to our normal lives so, so badly. But rushing that process is going to leave us in a much worse position where this actually lasts longer. So, Chris, I hear you, and I am concerned for you as well, and I'm concerned for all of the teachers out there who will be expected to go back to school in the fall. I'm hopeful that by that time we'll have more information, and that our school districts and our state will really heed that information and use it to make wise decisions. But I really do not think that come September, we will be back to normal. And I think we need to make sure that teachers have a seat at that table, a voice in that conversation, so that all teachers, all school staff are safe and healthy and are not putting themselves in jeopardy simply because we're rushing to solve these problems. So that's a great question. Thank you so much. Okay, so Steve from Hingham has a question. This is my last question that I've got. I'm probably going to wrap it up right after this, but if folks have questions, feel free to drop them in the comments. I do respond to every question that I get, and so if I can't answer it here while I'm live, I will happily get you an answer. So Annie over here on Instagram says, my mom is a teacher and we love your approach to education. Annie, thank you so much for that. I didn't mention this, but my mom is actually a teacher too. So she retired last year. So she was a fifth grade teacher for the longest time, and then a fourth grade teacher. She switched over, I don't even remember when, she would remember when, years ago, and she actually retired last year. You know, and I'll tell you, a lot of teachers I'm talking to right now, not to, poor Steve, we'll get to your question, Steve, I promise, but a lot of teachers I'm talking to right now who are still working but are kind of getting closer to retirement age are saying, you know, maybe I'll just retire because I'm worried about going back. And I'm scared that I'm putting myself at risk. And so maybe I'll just step aside and retire, you know, a few years earlier. You know, not a day goes by that I'm not grateful that my mom retired last year, because I don't have to worry about her making that difficult decision come September. You know, my mom has survived cancer. You know, my mom is in her, you know, early 60s. She is absolutely one of the people who is considered more at risk. And so the thought of her stepping back into a classroom, which she loves, and she's an incredible teacher, but the thought of her having to do that under these conditions is really hard for, you know, for me to think about. And so I'm grateful that she's not in that position. Oh, your mom teaches fourth grade as well. Oh, I love that. She tells me it was her favorite. She loved it. That's what she finished up with, started in fifth, ended in fourth. So Annie's mom teaches fourth grade as well. It's a good age. It's a good age. I hear. I don't know. My son is not quite there yet, so we'll see. But he's a lot of fun at 3. So, all right. So Annie, thank you for that, and thank you for joining me live. And you know, tell your mom I'm thinking about her, and I really hope that we get to a point where she feels comfortable, where she's able to stay safe and healthy. And I just, you know, even in normal circumstances, teachers are heroes. So just thank her for me. So, okay, Steve over here from Hingham asks, what is the current status of the PPP money? Great question, Steve. So just to recap for anyone who's not familiar with this, the PPP money, this is one of the financial relief items in the Federal CARES Act that was passed over a month ago now. This is the payroll or paycheck protection program. And really quickly, what it essentially does, is loans money to small businesses, in theory, we'll get there, loans money to small businesses to enable them to continue their payroll at pre-COVID-19 amounts. So it basically allowed small businesses to keep folks on payroll for a period of at least 8 weeks. And if they did that for a period of at least 8 weeks, that money would be forgiven. So it would not be a loan any longer, it would be a grant. What happened for anyone who's followed this, or hasn't followed this, I should say, is when the first wave of PPP funds went out, so it was about $440 billion, I think, was allocated pretty quickly. Within hours, millions of applications were submitted, and the money pretty quickly ran out. And what was happening was bigger companies were getting the money. And we can talk for hours about how horrible this is, but the real reason was because when banks looked at it and said, well, I can loan one company $10 million, or I can loan 10 companies $1 million, it was easier to loan the one company $10 million than the 10 companies $1 million. So that's what they did. So bigger companies were getting this money. There was a lot of outrage. The money ran out pretty quickly. A lot of small business owners did not get this money. A lot of women-owned companies did not get this money. A lot of companies owned by people of color did not get this money. And so there was a lot of outrage. So Congress passed an additional stimulus for this and funded it more, put more money into the PPP program. So my understanding, and I will admit I'm hearing different stories every day, Steve, so I apologize that I can't give you a perfect answer on this. But my understanding is that there are still banks that are loaning PPP funds, that the PPP money has not completely run out at this point. That said, I have also talked to a lot of folks who are struggling to either find a bank who will do it or to even get their bank to respond to their application. I know, and this, I think folks are having better luck at the smaller banks that they already have good relationships with. But I am seeing this across the board, whether it's the big banks or the more local or regional banks. So, look, I think we've seen this across the board with the stimulus money from the CARES Act for small business owners. And this is not just the PPP. Another piece of it was the EIDLs, which are the economic injury disaster loans. These always exist, but Congress funded them more because of COVID-19. And these are loans. They're not grants. So you do have to pay them back, but it essentially can be used to supplement your business during this difficult time. I will tell you, I think I applied for, and you apply for this directly through the SBA. I think I applied for one of these loans pretty much right away. So like early to mid-March, and I still have not heard anything. Now, and when I say anything, I don't even mean that I haven't gotten approved. I mean, like no one has reached out to say, hey, we're looking at your application. Here are the next steps. So, across the board, I think small business owners have been let down by the Federal CARES Act, by these two different stimulus options. And frankly, I'm incredibly disappointed in the way this has been rolled out. And I think we have seen big businesses across the board benefit from the federal stimulus money from the CARES Act. And you know what? That's not surprising because we've seen it before. And this is frankly one of the reasons why I'm running for state Senate, because I believe truly that we need small business owners in the state Senate. I believe that we need people who are going to fight to ensure that it's not the big corporations that get taxpayers' money, that it's us, it's our businesses, it's our workers, it's our schools, it's our communities that get this money. We are seeing too often tax benefits, tax programs go to benefit big companies. And look, I get the benefits. I understand why it's important that big industries like the airline industry or the auto industry exist. They create a lot of jobs, and that's really important. I'm not against big business. What I am against is big business taking advantage of their power, using their money to buy politicians' voices, to buy their votes, And we're seeing this happen at the federal level, and we see it happen at the state level too. And so for me, that's why one of the main reasons why this campaign is built on grassroots donors is because I refuse to take money from the big corporations, because I do not want to be owned by anyone when I am in the state Senate. I am going to the state Senate to represent your voice, because it is your vote that puts me there, and it is your community that I represent. And so that's what's important to me. So Steve, it's a great question. I'm sorry I don't have a slightly better answer for you, but I would say keep trying. It's very frustrating. We are seeing too many people left behind in all of this, but as far as I've heard, there's more money out there, so keep trying. All right, I'm gonna wrap it up there because we've gone much longer than I thought. In my head, I told my campaign staff, I said, these are gonna be 15 minutes. We're gonna go in, we're gonna answer the questions, we're gonna get out, and of course that didn't happen. So, because these are such great questions, and I really just appreciate everyone who has asked questions. I really appreciate everyone who's watched us live here over on Instagram, on Facebook, on YouTube, on our website. You all are incredibly amazing. I hope everyone is staying safe and healthy right now. I know how tough this is. I know people who are losing family members. I know people who are losing pets. I know people who are struggling to get work done with kids out of school. I know people who are struggling with isolation and loneliness. There is no question this is an incredibly difficult time for all of us, and we are all going through our own versions of this, but this is hard for every single person involved. And so I am sending you support, I am sending you love, I am sending you strength. I am absolutely here for you. Again, if you ever have questions for me or this campaign, you can go to megwheeler.com/questions. And I'm just going to wrap it up by saying, if you are a supporter of our campaign, if you are excited about the change and the bold ideas and the fresh perspectives that we're going to bring to the state Senate, then please head over to megwheeler.com/support and sign our pledge to support our campaign and send me to the state Senate. Because I truly believe that we need a voice in there that represents working families, that represents small business owners, that represents moms, that represents someone who understands the critical issues that our community is facing right now and is willing to actually stand up and use her voice and use her power for change so that we can finally see some results in this district and we can see our communities come out of this crisis so much stronger. So thank you everyone for joining me live here. I hope everyone has a good night. Again, I hope you are staying safe and healthy, and I will be back here next Tuesday night for another community check-in at 7:30 p.m. Eastern. Have a good night.